Hello, everybody, and welcome to Question and Answers with myself, Michelle Brooks, and Dr. Victoria Baxter.
Hello.
So those of you that know me, I am a specialist in women's care and especially helping women with endometriosis. And I'm also doing a lot of research right now into women and menopause. And Victoria, hi Victoria, I'll let you introduce yourself and what you do.
Yes, hi, I'm a clinical psychologist. I have a special interest in our relationships with food. But I have been a clinical psychologist, fully qualified since 2013, and have worked a lot in physical health conditions. So I also support people with endometriosis in my NHS role in a pain service. And I've quite extensive background in mental health as well. So the therapies I use, I really enjoy bringing it to this world of our relationships with food, because so often it's tied up with, you know, ourselves, our mental health in some instances, and our physical health certainly. So that's me. That's what I do. So we've been enjoying working together, haven't we, Michelle?
Yeah, we've got a really good crossover, I think, between what I can offer practically and what you can offer psychologically, because the two, for me, when they work in synergy, are like really, really great, aren't they, together?
Absolutely.
So what we do each month is we come on and we answer questions which our audiences may have for one another. So Victoria, do you have any questions for me this month?
I do. I have one. It taps into both the menopause stuff and general wider nutrition question as well. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. So yeah, in general, I'm working with a few people who are experiencing either full-blown menopause or in the perimenopausal stage. So I was going to pick your brains, if I can, about any general advice you can give for eating well during that phase of your life. And then also I have a very specific question for someone who's a vegetarian and would like to increase their protein intake. So I was going to pick your brains for any just tips and recipes or ways to get more protein in when you're vegetarian. Specifically, maybe not as many around the grains and legumes kind of area, because this person's not so keen on those. So any other thoughts? So where do you want to start?
We'll start with the menopause question. Again, you know, I'm not a specialist in this area, but I've been doing quite a lot of reading and research into it at the moment. And I urge people to actually have a listen to my latest podcast, which is with a lady called Jackie Seciari. And she is really great in this area. And I've learned a lot from her over the last few months. But I did a whole interview podcast with her, and she gives some amazing advice. So I urge listeners to have a little listen to that and you know, see if she can point you in a better direction. But what I'm kind of getting a gist of with menopause and nutrition especially is that, and you know this as well with what you do, Victoria, that women have been dieting for years, and that dieting has put so much stress on the body that it's not functioning properly. So what I urge women, especially in the menopause, when things are slowing down a little bit, is that I'm really sorry, I've got loads of noise going in my background, and I'm going to lose my train of thought a little bit because it's quite distracting. So I do apologise if I do go track a little bit. But yeah, ditching the diet at this point is my biggest kind of takeaway from what I've read. That dieting is putting unnecessary stress, and I'm talking like dieting in the way of calorie restricting and being in so much of a deficit that your body is not getting the right nutrients. So what I would suggest is looking really at your nutrients and making sure that you've got the right things going in for you. And that's different for everybody, even like, although women go through the menopause, it is like looking at an individual and seeing what nutritionally they are lacking, because symptoms are different for each woman as well. So some women are having a lack of sleep, some women are having more mood swings. So again, that nutrition needs to match that. So I can't really say a specific kind of nutrition plan, but individually look at the symptoms that are causing you the most grief. For me, I'm starting to go through perimenopause, and mine is my mood. So I'm like looking at more, like obviously I'm on an anti-inflammatory plan for my endometriosis anyway, so that works for that reason. But for the kind of like mood side of it, I'm looking more into things that slow me down. So looking more into like stress management and looking into my exercise and making sure that I'm not doing too much in that area, pushing my body too much, because again, this all puts strain on the body and affects our sleep, our mood, everything. So it's all a big collective thing. I was going to go somewhere else with the nutrition around menopause as well. There's certain kind of supplements that are great, but it's not a one size fits all either. You know, like if you read up a lot on about hot flashes, it's all about like sage and black cohosh, which I'm not saying don't work, but it might not work for everybody. It has to be your individual needs. But what I would say is an anti-inflammatory plan, because estrogen is dropping, and with this can cause inflammation in the body, which is why a lot of times like we start putting on weight and start having like a big midsection. It can be to do with inflammation occurring in the body. So I would say to follow an anti-inflammatory plan as best as possible, which is taking out things that, again, individually it's very different for everyone, but I would say the biggest kind of inflammatory causes are cow dairy, wheat, gluten, caffeine, alcohol, anything that is kind of triggering in the digestive system. I would look to reducing that, especially alcohol in women with menopause. It's really hard because we start to feel like in a time of our life where we're quite stressed and body's changing, and it's quite nice to sit and relax with a glass of wine. And I'm not saying never do that, but just be very aware that the more you drink, the more stress you're putting on the body, the immune system's going to lower, you're going to be more tired. So all of the menopausal symptoms can be reduced sometimes by what we do or don't do with our nutrition. So again, like caffeine, massive trigger for inflammation. So if you're like in your, generally I'm talking 40s, when you're starting to go through perimenopause, try and looking at how much caffeine you're actually having, because again, if you're having disrupted sleep due to menopause and estrogen dropping, then adding caffeine in there is not going to be very helpful. And again, I'm not saying that everybody has to cut out caffeine, but just make sure that you're not having it sort of after midday, because again, that can be disruptive to sleep. So it's a bit of a minefield really when you're talking about menopause and to what to do. It's an individual thing, but definitely look at anti-inflammatory and getting in a lot of like omega-3s, really good fatty fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, or if you can't stomach stuff like that, make sure that you're taking a good omega-3 supplement that's sustainably sourced, not like a cheapo one, because there's a big difference between cheap supplements and ones that are sustainably sourced. So I would look at that. Magnesium, again, is great for sleep, but again, it has to be an individual case as to whether they need to take it. But if you're taking magnesium, that's either magnesium citrate or glycate, I never say glycate, I think it is. So that's a really good supplement if you're suffering with sleep problems, because it helps if you take that about an hour before going to bed. Keeping the gut as healthy as possible. Prebiotics are great for that, but again, in individual case, don't just start taking them because I'm telling you to. It's a case-by-case scenario. So there's just a few things that could be helpful when starting with menopause.
And when you say like these things need to be thought about on an individual basis, where might someone go to have that conversation? Would it be with someone like yourself, a nutritionist, or would it be with a doctor?
Well, you can talk to your doctor at first, but they generally will try and veer you towards HRT, which again, I'm not against at all. It can help a lot of women. It has to be your choice at the end of the day, which route you want to go through. For me, because I've always believed that you can cure yourself by what you eat or don't eat, and by your mental state as well. So I'm going down that route at the minute, and I'm not saying that I'll never go on HRT, because if it's something that will help me, then I'm not one that says no, I'm not taking it. You know, I've had endometriosis for the best part of my adult life, and I still take painkillers if the pain gets too bad. But I do try and control it by other means before I resort to that. So yeah, again, I'm not someone who's going to sit here and say don't take HRT, but that's what generally doctors do suggest first. So yeah, information you can get from any kind of somebody. I'd say a nutritional therapist is probably your best person. So even though I know a lot, I'm a nutrition coach, I'm not the same as a nutritional therapist. And often a nutritional therapist can lead you in a great direction. So that's where I would probably start, somebody with that kind of knowledge.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So the second part to my question was about protein ideas for someone who's vegetarian and doesn't particularly like lentils and pulses. Is working on that and willing to try and experiment, but any other thoughts on how to increase protein in the diet?
Yeah, it does make it quite hard, because obviously a vegetarian is lacking protein anyway, because obviously the biggest protein comes from meat and fish. So if the vegetarian, then it's not to say that you can't be vegetarian getting the protein, but it's a lot harder. And especially, like you say, if they're not eating in pulses and legumes and grains, then that's really difficult too, because a lot of protein just come from those things like quinoa, chickpeas, that kind of stuff is really high in protein too, which is where I would normally leave a vegetarian. But what I would say, if they're, you know, if they're going to try and add a little bit of that in, brilliant. But if not, then I would go down the source of maybe a protein shake, you know, protein powder,
Right.
and you know, a really good quality one. Pea protein's great, hemp protein, all of these type of things that a vegetarian can get in a kind of more of a liquid form. You can add that as well. You don't have to just add it in a shake and drink it. You can add it to things like making it into like brownies and stuff like that.
I've done that before. I had experimented with it. It was when I had that operation, which is when we first met, I think, Michelle. I decided to get some protein powder in preparation for getting over an operation and put it in baking and things, and cakes, chocolate muffins with it, and it was nice.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, if they do have a bit of a sweet tooth, then add it to things like that, and you'll be able to get a little bit more protein in there. But definitely I would look into kind of a supplement protein, you know, protein supplement, if you're not getting any protein from other sources, most definitely.
Great, thank you. And I imagine, if like, because I know this person is thinking of widening a little bit, so I imagine there's tons of recipes out there, are there, for like lentils,
yeah, absolutely. Just look on any good website that has vegetarian options. I look a lot at the BBC Good Food Guide, a lot of my stuff, and they seem to have like more simple things as well, because the last thing that you want a busy lifestyle is to be like cooking for hours, unless you've got time to food prep on a weekend or whenever you have time. But definitely quick, easy recipes you'll find on the BBC Good Food Guide.
Oh, that's a good one. Thank you.
Okay, so my lovely question for you, it's kind of a bit of a case study really, and again, I think I know the answer, but it's not a straightforward answer either. But I've got
never is for me, sorry.
Never is, no, it never is. But I've got a lady I've been working with for a little while, and she's very intelligent. She knows her stuff. I've written her a nutrition plan. She is aware of what she needs to do for her particular case. I'm not going to go into the case, but I can tell you that she's a menopausal lady.
Okay.
And she wants to feel in, you know, better position with her nutrition and exercise. She's got the exercise down to a T. She's loving that. She's doing that really well. She buys all the food in that she needs to, you know, have a healthy, balanced lifestyle and for her particular needs. But she leaves it in the fridge, and even if she's prepped something, she's done. I've like talked her through it. We've made ourselves accountable for it. She's done the food prep, but then she leaves it in the fridge to go off and doesn't eat it. And instead she'll kind of snack on bits of chocolate, crackers and cheese, that kind of stuff, instead of eating what's already in the fridge there ready. So it's not about it not being there, it's just the mindset is not there.
Something's
so have you got any suggestions of where
is that every time? Is it every meal? Has it been going on, or is it, do you mean the odd time?
It's more often than not. She will probably make the stuff, eat it that one day, but because she's prepped it, she'll probably not eat it again.
Okay, yeah. So more often than not, she's eating all this stuff. And is there anyone else in the home, or does she live alone?
Yeah, she lives with her husband.
So is he eating the same as her, or is he eating different stuff?
I would imagine differently, because she's only really picking at things. She's not properly eating a meal.
Okay. So yeah, it is like you say, it is hard to just give, I mean, tips or advice necessarily without knowing her personally, but certainly I'd be really interested in understanding what's going on for her, in both in the moment. So when she's at that moment of what I might call like your choice point, you know, that moment where she's opening the fridge and she's got a choice to take out what she's prepared or to go elsewhere. I'd be really interested in what's showing up for her in that moment. So like what emotionally is showing up, where her mind's at, what kind of narratives are going on for her, whether or not she's even aware of any of that, or whether it feels like she's acting on autopilot. So these would be things that I'd be encouraging someone to pay attention to over the space of a week or so, and maybe make some notes on what's showing up. because there could be so many different angles to go down. There could be so many different factors involved in that kind of a barrier to us, because essentially what we're talking about here is somebody's got an idea of what they want to do and what they feel they should do for their health, but something's hooking them away and taking them down a different path a little bit more often than is ideal. And usually the kind of things that hook us away are tricky feelings. Sometimes it can be like overwhelming, like feelings of like, ugh, you know, I can't even put word to that, but just like, ugh, like really just, ugh, no, it's not doing it kind of thing. It can be that kind of a feeling. Sometimes it can be little thoughts that comes to us more cognitively, like, you know, we might have a thought like, no, I really don't want that, I really don't fancy that. Or it can almost sometimes be a little like, almost like a little inner rebel as such, being like, no, I don't know, I'm not going to be told what to eat kind of thing, you know, maybe a striving to make our own choices kind of thing. So whilst on the one hand I'd want to know what's happening in that moment, I'd also be interested in what's generally happening in life overall. So I know you said this lady's going through the menopause. There's, you know, it, it might be that it's a time for her that there's a lot of emotions going on, like, you know, generally there might be outside stress.
I mean, she's a self-employed holistic therapist. So
Right.
she has I mean, I've coached her with this as well, to have like rest times and not just book everybody in back to back, have a little bit of time in between and stuff. But she is like quite new to a business as well, so she's trying to build it up.
Very,
so,
yeah, very stressful.
Yes, she's in a stressful time as well as going through the menopause. So,
and that tells me something as well, the fact that maybe she's needed some support to say, you need time for you. That can be quite telling a little bit as well, in terms of how she might relate to herself. So it sounds like someone who's very driven. You know, she's striving to make the best that she can of this business, it sounds like. And I wonder where her needs come in her life. And often I work with a lot of people who struggle to put their needs first, and often that can be related to just, I suppose, our lives narratives, you know, things that we've learned about how to treat ourselves over our life through our past experiences, through other influences like society and culture doesn't really support us in looking after ourselves. So there's a lot of people out there who are just very much driven by a strive to do, a strive to achieve, and our emotional needs, or our, in this case, our physical needs, like this lady's nutritional needs, just aren't necessarily having the voice. And there might be a stronger voice that encourages us to I don't know, just keep going, or just to ignore how we're feeling, really. And so if we aren't equipped with strong skills to support ourselves and look after ourselves, then when we're faced with those, so all those feelings I mentioned that might possibly be around when we open the fridge, that kind of, ugh, I'm knackered, or like, oh, I don't fancy it, or all these tricky feelings that are around, if we have, or if we struggle to have a part of us that's going to support and look after ourselves, when those tricky feelings come up, instead we're more likely to potentially do something that's not necessarily in our best interest, to maybe block them out. Like, this is why I said right at the beginning, it'd be interesting to know whether this lady is aware of what's showing up, because so often we just live in autopilot. And part of living in autopilot is it can be a protection against not having to face all this. Because if I'm in autopilot, I just behave, I just do, and I also tend to reach for stuff that's going to be a quick fix for how I'm feeling. So that's typically like high sugar, high fat stuff when it comes to food, you know, or stuff that's got like an association with soothing for us. So stuff that maybe earlier in life has been laid down as, so for me personally, it's takeaways have like that really strong association for me of relaxation and soothing. So if we're living in autopilot, not particularly without a particularly strong sense of how to care for myself and able to do that, it's very hard to even make those micro decisions. And in some cases, it can mean that we totally unintentionally fall into a pattern of almost self-sabotage of making decisions that are taking us away, because maybe moving towards health would have to mean fully looking at everything, and that can feel overwhelming.
Yeah, totally get that. And I think as well, what I mean, we can both relate to this as well, is we teach a lot about this stuff. I teach a lot about nutrition, I teach a lot about self-care, but then sometimes, because I'm teaching so much of it, mine begins to suffer.
Oh God, yeah.
And I think it's the same with this lady. She teaches so much holistic stuff, and she has a specific niche well in what she does.
Right.
It's that I think that potentially she's teaching that many other people that she's forgetting about herself along the way.
Yeah. So I guess what I was just saying though is just to say that is just a very broad, me just thinking out loud all the different things that cross my mind when I hear that kind of situation, and similar to how you were saying it.
Yeah, well, I'll obviously get her to listen back to this and see if she's got obviously some really great tips in there. But if not, I'll pass her over to you and see if having a further conversation. Obviously, I can't give you the specifics as it's anonymous, but if
she ever fancied a chat, that goes for anyone watching these. If anyone ever fancies a chat, I'm always up for a chat about stuff. And I guess in terms of tips, especially though for someone in that situation who's maybe noticing that they're falling into those traps and that they're not behaving in a way that they want to, my main tip as such would be to take time each day to just kind of check in with yourself and try and step out of that autopilot mode. So like you've said about, you've given advice on making time for rest, I would say when you are able to pause in between clients, in between tasks, to just check in with yourself and ask, how am I feeling right now? What's going on in my mind right now? How am I feeling physically right now? Not necessarily with an intention of being able to do, there might be something you can do. You might realize you need the loo, so you go to the loo, or you're thirsty, so you have a drink. But just to get into a habit of stepping out of autopilot and checking in with myself, because if we can make that more habitual, then we're well armed then for those moments when we're at a choice point, and we're armed to A, notice that we're at a choice point, and B, be able to tune in with ourselves and actually pause and make a more mindful choice. So that would be my first tip, is just to get into the habit of checking in with ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great tip, that. And again, I teach all of this as well, being self-aware, looking after ourselves. It goes part and parcel in what I do as well. So it's fascinating, isn't it, that we can just live in this universe in ourselves of not really being aware.
So easy though.
Absolutely. Well, as always, been amazing talking to you, and thank you so much for your input there. And again, to the audience, if you have any questions for either of us for next month, then just pop it in the comments box below and we'll be sure to answer it in one of our episodes.
Great.
So thanks, Victoria, for joining me.
Thank you very much.
See you all soon. Take care. Bye.